I want to welcome Agile XRM to the podcast. I've known the people at Agile XRM for the past 12 years. I've seen how their business process management tool can add massive value to complex organizational processes in sectors such as finance and government. If you have complex processes or a need for dialogues on the Power Platform or Dynamics 365, take a look at how this BPM tool can add value. You can find them at agilexrm.com or check out the show notes for more details. Welcome to the MVP Show. My intention is that you listen to the stories of these MVP guests and are inspired to become an MVP and bring value to the world through your skills. If you have not checked it out already, I do a YouTube series called How to Become an MVP. The link is in the show notes. With that, let's get on with the show. Today's guest is from Canada. He works at Nextone Consulting as a Dynamics 365 AX consultant. He was first awarded as MVP in 2024. His extensive experience with Dynamics 365 Finance and SCM, as well as the Power Platform. He leads the Toronto Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management user groups and speaks at industry conferences. You can find links to his bio, social media, etc. in the show notes for this episode. Welcome to the show, Oleksiy.
Thank you, Mark. Nice to hear from you.
Good to have you on the show. Toronto, that's a pretty nice place to live.
I'd say so, especially in the summer for sure. I mean, you can still come here in the winter if you're up for skiing and some cold weather, but I think best time to see it would be in the summer.
I love the city. You can basically transverse underground everywhere during winter, right?
Yeah. The extensive path network for sure that connects multiple skyscrapers in downtown area.
Nice. I've been there a couple of times. Been up the what do they call is it the Needle? Do they call it the Needle? Sky? What do you call it?
Oh yeah, CN Tower. I think it used to be. My kids were just talking to me about it, and they said, "Oh, Papa, it used to be a tallest structure in the world for 30 plus years." I don't know what beat it. I don't know, but it is still pretty tall. And there is a nice restaurant on the top. If you really made it, I think you can dine there every weekend.
I've had a dinner up there. I was an invited guest of an ISV. I was there for a Microsoft conference years ago. 2016, they used to run, I think Microsoft Partner Conference was run there in 2016, and the other time was in 2012. And those are the two times I've been to Toronto to both to the Microsoft conferences. Yeah,
it's a great city. I don't know, I think it's like every big city probably has something to offer. Can't really compare to other ones. You probably live in a bunch of them, but I like it. I mean, that's what I call home for the last 20 plus years.
Wow, long time. So tell me a bit about food, family, and fun. What do they mean to you?
Food. Okay, so let's start with family. I have a wife. I was born and raised in Ukraine. My wife is Ukrainian as well. We have 3 sons together, 12, 10, and 7 years old, right? My wife is very happy that we turned out to have just 3 boys, right? I think she was really enjoying that. Food, family, and the third one?
Fun.
Oh, fun. For fun, okay. I mean, I like sports, right? Overall, Mark, I think I like sports. I mean, I play team sports, I play individual sports. So I play soccer, which is football, right? Here, like once a week, indoor, outdoor leagues, different types of fields, etc. I enjoy the competitiveness of it, and I enjoy that I'm running, right? Because I don't enjoy running without a purpose, just like jogging and things like that. But running while you play the game, trying to get a ball and score it is a different story to me. And for the sports, like I started playing squash a couple of years ago, very demanding on your body, but at the same time, it's kind of challenging as well, right? So I don't know how popular the sport is. I have a club near my house. It takes me like 15 minutes to drive there. I play with my brother. I play with my kids. And it's a fun sport. It's very demanding, but still fun.
You can work up a good sweat, right? Playing squash.
Oh, damn. I mean, those rallies, there's said that somewhere that the amount of calories that the squash player burns is in the top 3, maybe just next to those guys that row and in these long boats.
High impact.
Yeah, and for the food, I mean, I changed my relationship with food quite recently, maybe 3-4 years ago. To me, I mean, I still indulge into things like, don't get me wrong, I like food. I like pistachios and figs. I can eat them like nonstop, I think. But I mean, I just looked at it and said, well, maybe to play squash a bit longer and play soccer, I would need to keep my weight under control. So I started intermittent fasting. And I'm looking at the food as the source of energy, right? I still enjoy it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I would definitely not say no to a nice dinner, but I just try to not overindulge, I guess, a bit.
So intermittent fasting, do you have a strict regimen? Is it, do you do a 16-8 or what's your model?
Yeah, I'm like, I eat only from 1 to 7 p.m. I don't even know what it is, right? Probably 6 hours. I'm not into it much. I just heard it on one podcast, 1 to 7, it's stuck in my head, and I just stuck with it. Like, to be honest, it always fascinates me, and I was talking to my wife about that recently, is just how certain things that you know about, but delivered in one particular way at one particular point in time can make a life lasting difference, right? So we all know, for example, that you need to brush your teeth twice a day, right? Was I doing that? Not regularly, right? But then one dentist or technician actually said something, and I started doing it, and I'm still doing that, right? So just surprising to me what that delivery is, how you can get that message across, because you know about those common knowledge stuff, but not many people do follow them, right? But some of them just it's almost like you turn on the switch.
It's interesting. I noticed from about 2017, the whole intermittent fasting movement really took off globally. I was in London at the time. I got an app called, I can't even remember what the app was called. It's designed to track your fasting activities. It was called Zero. And it was free to start with. I'm one of the listed. I've got the badge for one of the OGs, on the app. But I've done some big fasts in my life. I've done 2 21-day fast, water only. That was intense, and very high impact. In fact, I did the 2 21-day fast in a single year. So I became skin and bones. People thought I had something wrong with me. I was selling at the time for a bank, and it was definitely quite different. But then I suppose on intermittent fasting, the longest streak I've done is about 50 days in a row of doing from 12 till 7. 12 till 7, I think, is the only time of the day I'd eat, from 12 till 7, and then fast the rest of the time. But I find I've only broken that recently. I went to MVP Summit, and I haven't, what was that, 3 weeks ago or so, and I haven't got back into, straight back into the habit of doing it. But I find I even get a clearer mind by doing it. So it is very effective.
Yeah, definitely. Something with that transformation in your body does trigger certain things to happen. I don't know what the secret is, but you can definitely see that. Yeah. Yeah, for me, it was useful, beneficial overall. I don't know. Again, the weight loss was not the main focus, but it just turned out to be there, and I just stuck with it.
Yeah, nice. How did you get into IT?
I always was interested in computers overall, I'd say, right? Even when I was living back in Ukraine. But how particularly, I was doing CNC programming. So I was working for an aerospace company, and I was programming these CNC mills, like making those large aluminum parts for Boeing, right? Like I left the company a while back, so you don't blame me on anything that is happening there now. Right. And I enjoyed this work, right? I enjoyed this work. It was interesting. You program something, you go to the floor, you load that program to the machine, and you see that part emerge from the piece of aluminum. Right. But at the same time, it's like, what's next, right? What is next for me there as a programmer? Can I do anything above and beyond that? Right. Wasn't really anything that interested me, like options that are going to management, etc. So I said, okay, let me just try to go to a business school, for example, right? So I decided, and I was living in Ottawa back then, capital of Canada. And I went to university there for 1 year to get my postgrad in business administration. I did that. And then that was right during that 2009, 2010, was this, whatever, the recession. I forgot, not recession, but
Yes, 2008 was a recession, GFC.
Not many jobs were available. So one company that was interested in my services and they gave me a chance, basically, right? And I'm still grateful to this day, was a small partner based out of Ottawa that they had the in-house consultancy branch. They used Axapta on their own. And they gave me basically a bunch of work, like notebooks, right? Bunch of textbooks about the Dynamics AX 2012 it was then. And I just started learning. To me, it was just my first introduction to the IT combined together with some business knowledge, I guess, business lingo, right? And not many things did make sense at the beginning, right? But that's when I just kind of started working. And then they kind of asked me, like, had an interview a month later after the holidays. They just asked me how I was talking, like, did I understand anything at all? Maybe 20% of the things that I've read there. They were like, I think they were quite happy overall. And that's what I started. That's how my consultancy, my business analyst career has started, right? I was working as a trade and logistics consultant for that company, NMB Solutions, by the way. I was lucky enough, I was fortunate enough to start working and communicating with people from different departments, from stakeholders from different departments, finance, production, etc. And that's how you start being introduced to different modules of the software. And it's really up to you then, what do you do with that? Can you just keep up and just kind of try to learn the functionality there and here and be useful on the project? Or would you say it's just too much, too many new things, etc.? But for me, I was always, I'm looking at this job as it's a constant learning. I mean, you have to be prepared to learn nonstop if you want to be successful in this job.
So from 2010 through to now, what would you consider would be your key career highlights?
Okay, so I mean, I got the MBA recently, right? But that was, one story. But I think so there are two things. I did one thing. I did one blog post that was not that popular, but that I did a lot of thinking, to be honest, about it used to be a translation of some accounting principles. I even forgot what they were, like maybe 3-4 years ago. Mark, maybe you remember, there used to be IFRS type of structure or some sort of rules introduced to GAAP accounting in US. So we have to be following different rules about revenue recognition. So I was reading through that material and understanding, like, how can I translate existing Dynamics functionality into this to meet those requirements? And I wrote a fairly long and sophisticated blog post about that. So that, to be honest, that was the achievement in one regard, because it took a while for me to understand what the concepts are and try to translate them creatively into what was available in standard solution. After that, they introduced the revenue recognition modules and things like that. It's much easier to do it now. But when it was actually, the switch actually happened like 3, 4, 5 years ago, that was a different story. And what is my biggest achievement? I think that, just trying to, I think I stayed overall doing the contracting for the most parts. I stayed quite busy, right? And I think that's what I enjoy the most, right? And some people say it's just fairly challenging to do so, but being part of different projects, different challenging projects, and some of them are really kind of in different shapes, but that was probably the most interesting part. And always trying to make sure that you're there, not just to spend your time, but actually try to help anyone that is involved, right? Consultants that you work with, client, of course, making sure they feel comfortable and they're not overwhelmed with the things that are coming their way and the negative, maybe some sort of baggage that was accumulated over the implementation period, right? I think that's what I think is, I don't know if it's an achievement, Mark, to be honest. I think that's everyone that is in that line of business actually do that. But
so are you contracting now?
Yeah. I have my independent company, Nexon Consulting, right? And that's what I've been working with a variety of different partners throughout this last, 13, 14 years, since 2011. I did a brief stint at Microsoft consultancy services, but that was back in 2013. and it just was not the right time. The travel demands were quite high, and that was the time where I had my second son on the way, and I just needed to spend a bit more time there at home. And that's why I was able to, again, I did my part. I finished whatever needed to be finished, but then I had to leave and resume my contracting career by actually doing a project for Toronto Blue Jays, MLB team here in Toronto. Probably you visited the game there while you were in Toronto.
Absolutely, I did.
You were looking down from the CN Tower right at the game there.
Yeah, but definitely been in the stadium. Definitely watched a game there. Tell me, I'll have a lot of people that listen to the podcast and they work for partners. They either work for partners, Microsoft, or at an end customer. And a lot of them ask about going contracting or going freelance, right? But so they can pick their projects, so they can pick their work, but their fear is taking that plunge, like the backstop of a company, if you like, or paying their salary. What's your advice to them? What's your recommendation to them? What's worked for you?
Great question, right? So I get that question a lot recently, right? With the people that I work with from client side, from the partner side, people are reaching out to me over LinkedIn and just saying, "Hey, Oleksiy, can you just tell me more?" They have these burning questions about switching and going freelance. And again, I share my knowledge, right? I found that sharing my knowledge was always good to me, right? So it always felt right to me, right? That's how I always looked at it, right? I started my channel back 2016, and I tried to share the videos there, and again, share the content in any shape and form that I can. Always felt right to me, that was the thing. And to be honest, when I share, like especially some sort of content, it does become, I do learn from it as well, right? So it benefits me, right? It benefits me because as you talk about the different concepts, you just trigger certain thoughts, there's certain ideas that would not pop up to you. And I've heard it's the best way. One of the ways to learn is actually to teach, right? And I find it very, very, very true, right? And plus, keeping up with all the new functionality does keep me ready for the next or the current project, right? But let me come back to your question, Mark, right? So they are reaching out, and I can't really push you towards this way, right? You have an interest for sure, so I will make sure to answer any questions. But in my opinion, that's a lot of based on your character, right? So how risk averse are you, right? Are you ready to have that uncertainty, or you a bit more on the safer side and you want to have a predictability, stability of full-time permanent employment? And, there are a lot of consideration there. So, but for me, I was always kind of person that couldn't really wait much, right? And that came back to burn me. And I know it's my kind of personal trait that I always felt, okay, let's do it, right? Like I did not really, probably I could have been a bit more patient in the past, I would say, right? But overall, I am where I am just because of how I looked at things. And if opportunity presented itself, I always try to make it work, right? So I always try to find a way to get something done. But coming back, I think it's based on your personality, right? So for some people, permanent employment is definitely the way to go, right? I don't think they are ready, and they will be exposed, and may just be negative on them, right? And maybe they will just not find it as kind of beneficial to them, of course, right? But I try to share pros and cons about different situations, different scenarios, and let them decide. Some of them did make that switch; they did not regret it. Some of them decided to be permanent, right? Which is totally fine.
Final question: how did you become an MVP? What was that process for you?
So I had my channel since 2016. And again, as I said, sharing the knowledge, that was the thing that I was doing, right? Always make sure that I keep myself up to date. That was beneficial to me personally as well, right? You always try to look out for new features, trying to share the scenarios and some ideas and some solutions that you came up with. And then Frederick Satri, I don't know if I will pronounce his last name correctly. Do you know who I'm talking about? Okay, so he's, I think he's a working for Microsoft right now in Norway. He saw my videos, and I think I did a series on some specific topic, and he had asked me if I would be interested in being nominated, and I said yes. So, and that was back in 2020, and then there was some, the process was not as smooth, I guess. There was some transition to a new website, so I had to kind of work with the support team to submit my application. But yeah, I think my biggest contributions, I think, probably are the YouTube videos. I also, as you mentioned in the introduction, I'm also a chapter leader for Toronto user group Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain. I try to, again, understand what the group would find interesting and share it with them, right? So it does take some time to prepare for those sessions, and I'm trying a new format. If I can just plug in one thing here, I'm going to be running a dynamic transportation Q&A session at the end of April, right? I just did a poll on my channel, and transportation, I think, is one of those topics that is kind of undercovered, I guess. There is not a lot of material on this topic, let's just say, and some consultants are interested in functionality that is available there, right? And I was fortunate enough to be exposed to it very early on, so I kind of learned it a while back. And I'm going to run a Q&A session, 1 hour. It's a different format. Just I don't want to take like 3 hours or 4 hours of people's time on a specific topic. I said, let's just try it out. So it's going to be 1 hour Q&A session. You can submit questions beforehand, or you can ask them during the session. It will be, I think, April 26th. Don't put me on that. I think it's Friday. April 26th, yes.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Business Application MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If you like the show and want to be a supporter, check out buymeacoffee.com/NZ365 Guy. Thanks again, and see you next time.